Hi, friends, and welcome back to Lights On, a Neuromoms Collective podcast. And today we are going to have a little different spin. We are going to just be real, raw, and just shooting from the hip, as Erin likes to say. We're going to do some little life updates with Dallas. And one of the things about Neuromoms, as we have talked about, is we just want to be real. And we're just going to be in the moment. We're going to give a little update on Dallas's life. And we're just going to talk about, from a caregiver's perspective, what life can be like. A lot of times we are just trucking along as caregivers and we think things are going in one direction. And then all of a sudden we take a turn. So Erin, I'm going to let you give us a little update and let us know how things are going and what happened and how things are turned out.
Amanda, it has been a rough summer in some ways and an amazing summer in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
In the end of May, Dallas and his girlfriend Marina did a road trip from the East Coast out to the West Coast where she's living now. And they just had an amazing drive, national parks, and they had both their dogs, and they were just like, this is the best. And everything went wonderfully. It was just such a treat. And my mama heart was just so full every day getting these updates. And it was amazing. The day they got home, he scratched the top of his head, just had a little scratch right above his forehead, and he felt something different. And he asked Marina to come look at it. And she's a nurse practitioner, so she's abundantly qualified to take a look at weird things on his noggin. And so she went over and looked at it, and it was actually a piece of metal from the hardware that held his skull reconstruction back together. The way that his skull reconstruction had happened in 2022. And the analogy I use is if you're carving pumpkins at Halloween time, right? So the majority of his skull is the big pumpkin. And then you take the pumpkin lid off. That's what they call a bone flap in brain surgery world. When the bone flap had been put back on, it didn't go on very well because the first hospital that did the original craniectomy, when they did that, they did it with such brute force that it has been likened to battlefield care. It has been likened to hatchet work. The skull was broken and chipped, and it was really, really poor quality, the way that they handled that. The fact that he lived through that surgery is shocking, truly. But when they went to put it back on, it was like the first time that your 6-year-old cuts the pumpkin lid and they just chap at it, and it doesn't really, you don't even know which direction is right. So they put it back on, they put a mesh over it. It's like the thickness of basically a pantyhose, and it's sort of like a chainmail. And then all these little screws, both on the big part of the pumpkin and on the pumpkin lid, so that that mesh would hold everything together. And his body has been reabsorbing his bone flap, which apparently is not unusual, that part of it is reabsorbed. Contributing factors are being a male, being under 30, and being a smoker. He's not a smoker, but he is a male under 30. And so a lot of that shrinkage of the calcium was more extreme than it might have been in, say, you or I, if we had to have this procedure. And I hope we don't. Mm-hmm. And then his body was viewing the metal pieces as infections because they were foreign objects, and it was pushing them out. So anyhow, long story short, that doesn't work, and you have to have it taken out. Then there came all of the challenges. He's a retired injured veteran, and so there's all the challenges of the VA, which I have so much respect and gratitude for. Absolutely. And it's a massive organization with a lot of paperwork, and I get it. Well, I don't get it, but like I can understand that. They can't do this surgery in-house. It had to go to OHSU, which is our very, very high-end hospital here in Portland. They said they wanted the surgery done within 3 weeks. The surgery was done 10 weeks later. So that added a level of stress to it. Are you tracking so far?
Anytime we have to maneuver through the medical system, it is so challenging and so stressful. And I feel like it causes me PTSD.
We actually, before we started recording, we were talking about how it's important that we don't talk about politics on this show because that's not what we're here for. And I'm going to say we need socialized medicine. Dallas has socialized medicine. Being in the VA is the same thing as socialized medicine. We don't worry about whether or not he can get this procedure. And we don't worry about whether or not we're going to lose our house to get it done. That is a blessing for us that most families don't experience. Right? Less than 1% of people are ever in the service. So that means less than 1% of people are having access to that type of incredibly good health care. And even with all that support, It is a nightmare. I think, Amanda and I, obviously, you and I are talking all the time. So our listeners are just maybe hearing about this for the first time. You've been tracking this since June 1 when it started. There, every single day, I would call the neurosurge clinics and the scheduling departments. I would do that every day, and I would spend 1 to 3 hours a day on this. What do people do without a caregiver? What do people do who have a normal job? I'm self-employed. I can work at night if I need to, so that during the day when the clinics are open, I can deal with them. What do people do who have little kids? What do people do who have language barriers? Like, this is, in addition to being worried about my son, because we're so entrenched in this journey and how it affects, lots and lots and lots of different types of families, I find myself more agitated and more stressed and more sad, realizing how much worse it is for so many other people.
Unfortunately, Erin, we just had this conversation last night. Mackenzie, very frustrated because of dealing with the medical situation. She doesn't have the capacity to sit on the phone for hours to make appointments because she now is on her husband's insurance and doesn't have my insurance. They're considering her pre-existing TBI condition and saying, we're not paying for this.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Didn't share that with you earlier.
Oh, honey. Oh, that just...
So medical bills continue to pile up. Certain doctors won't see her anymore because of it. It's a whole thing. Our medical system is ridiculous. What we turn people away for is ridiculous. What we expect individuals with a TBI to be able to navigate is ridiculous. So yeah, I can't even. And no, we're not going to go political.
But this is not political. What we expect human rights. This is what we want. The best that Mackenzie can be for this community and for her child and for her family is whole and healthy. Everybody benefit from people who are whole and healthy. And the fact that we make it so difficult, it's difficult for us with military backing. I don't understand it all. And, the number of people that have to navigate their TBIs completely on their own. No wonder that the rates of people taking their own life are so high. No wonder that the rates of addiction are so high. It's so depressing and scary. That's not supposed to be the topic, but my God, that's the through line of TBIs, is wherever you are in this journey.
Yes.
It's not, I have chills and I'm like tearing up.
I know. Me too. It's outrageous. But anyway.
And TBI journeys never end. They never end.
They never end. And how does the medical field and how do these insurance companies think that once you have a TBI, they can pay off these third-party people to do these evaluations and say, yep, you don't have a TBI anymore. Oh, your broken neck and broken back are fine. You shouldn't have any more pain. So check that box and we're dropping you from your insurance.
Inhumane.
It's inhumane. It's wrong. Let's do some breathing.
Okay, so I'm
back to
I'm
Dallas.
Gonna text Mackenzie later and I'll send her some cookies. This sucks. Okay, so we go in, we finally get the consults. We go in, we have to start over with the consults because we're leaving one medical system and going to the other. So we have to start over. And again, talk about wasted resources. We have to repeat the blood work, repeat the CT scans. And I'm like, who's paying for that? Those are time and resources. And Dallas has PTSD and he has medical PTSD. So some of those things are very difficult for him. But we have to do it.
Yes.
So, and his veins are all collapsed because he spent, 2 years in the hospital. So he has to do ultrasounds to get the veins. It's a whole ordeal. So we go in, we meet with a couple of neurosurgeons, and they said, after looking at all the slides and everything, they said the bone flap, the pumpkin lid has died and it has to come out, and all the hardware is going to come out, and we're going to leave him without a bone flap for about 2 months. They'd close him up, obviously, so he wouldn't have an open incision, and then put a helmet on him, and he'd wear a helmet for 2 months while they let any infection that was in his brain heal. Because the reason that it was poking all those things out and eating the skull is because it was a perceived infection that it was attacking. So they had to solve the infection. That would take about 2 months. And then the helmet would be off, and then they would open him back up for a second surgery. But in the middle of that, there'd actually be a little bonus surgery where they'd put a little inflatable pouch in his back under the muscle so that they could stretch out the muscle and the skin on his back. Because what they needed to do then for the final surgery was take a living donor transfer off of his own body. He had to be his own tissue donor. I couldn't do it for him as his mom. I tried. Take this tissue off the back about the size of my open hand, take the tissue off his back, and then create a new covering because the skin is so macerated and thin and weak from being open and closed 8 times already before we started this process. And so that was the prognosis, was that's what they were doing. And the surgery was last Friday, the 14th, a week ago today. And so we're prepared for this. And Dallas is terrified going into this. And I think everybody knows by now, we have permission from our children to talk about this, to share photos. We get ongoing consent from our children to continue to share their stories. So with this one, I said, can I share pictures? Can I talk about this? And he said, yes, absolutely. And I actually did make a little video of the first 24 hours of the surgery day, which was, I just want people to start it at 4:30 in the morning. But anyhow, Dallas really, really thought that there was a 1 in 10 chance he was going to die.
Oh my gosh.
That is a huge number. He's like, how can I possibly keep surviving these? How can they disassemble my skull? And how can I survive again? Because the last 2 big surgeries, he had to learn to walk and talk and swallow again. And he's like, I can't do that for a third time. I mean, all of us feel like we can't do that again, right? But we'll do whatever we have to do. So on Thursday last week, the day before the surgery, we were camping. We went to the beach in Oregon, just anything to distract him. We've been so busy for the last 2 months trying to distract him from what he believed was his impending death. And also, when we talk about the truth, part of all the fun we were having, all the stuff we were doing, is because if he was right and he didn't live, I wanted there to be one more vacation with his sister. So she came out. I wanted there to be one more camping trip. I wanted there to be one more, all of his uncles came over. We've had several dinners and get-togethers with the most special people in his life. Because if he was right, I wanted everybody to have one more time with him. That is a burden of grief. Grief can happen after a terrible situation. Grief can also happen during and leading up to something. And the amount of stress and grief and fear that we all had going into this, and we were going and having fun, and we were having fun. We genuinely were having fun. That doesn't mean that at night when it was dark and we were quiet and by ourselves, it doesn't mean we weren't absolutely terrified, because we were absolutely terrified. So we're at the beach last Thursday, day before surgery. We're doing our final pre-surgical consult on video call from a car in a parking lot of a grocery store. And that's what you do.
Why not?
Why not? And they said, okay, so X, Y, and Z, we're planning to do this. And I'm confused because they're not talking about taking the pumpkin lid away. And I'm like, wait, I thought you had to take the bone flap out and leave it out for 2 months and blah, 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 blah. And they said, oh, nobody called you? What do you mean? They had taken all of the CT slides going back from 2022 when this started through now. And I don't know if they'd made a time lapse. I don't know what they had done, but they've been able to compare. And we're talking, folks, not 2 or 3. We're talking dozens of CT scans. And they were able to see that the majority of the change to the pumpkin lid happened in the first 18 months. And it has been stable since then. So that absorption that happened has stopped. So that bone is not dead and it doesn't have to come out. The hardware, the body has rejected the hardware. It's not a natural part of his body. So they were like, we're just going to take the hardware out because everything else is actually going pretty well. And we're like, what? And so we didn't really want to tell a bunch of people that. I mean, we told him, he was on the call. We didn't want to tell a bunch of people because we didn't want expectations to be all over the board. The emotional whiplash of this kind of thing is unbelievable. And I didn't want people to suffer and be worried unnecessarily, but I also didn't want people to be too casual and then have something catastrophic happen again. So we went in and they said that it would be a 3 to 6 hour surgery. kind of expect 6 hours, takes as long as it takes. Okay. You get a call from an OR nurse once an hour. I don't know if this is true of all surgeries. I hope it is. It's a great process. But at least in brain surgery, once an hour, no matter what's happening in the OR, they call and they give you a status update. They just tell you how their vitals are doing. They tell you how they're tolerating everything and what's going on. And it's a very comforting thing because, when you're talking surgeries that can be 5, 10, 25, 40 hours, to not have any feedback is very terrifying.
Yeah.
Get a call at the 1 hour mark after they open him up. So he got in at 5:30, 5:15 in the morning. He was actually opened up around, I don't know, I think 8. Because it takes a long time when you're doing brain stuff in the OR. It takes a tremendous amount of time to get the head, the skull secured. And they often use little screws to screw so he's got little screw holes in his head to screw it into place so that there's no movement at all because the margin of error is none. So they finally open him up and I get a call an hour later and they said he's doing great. He's tolerated everything fine. The neurosurgeon's done and plastics is closing. And I know what all those words mean. And I didn't know what she meant. I was like, what do you mean plastics is closing? She's like, the plastic surgeon shouldn't talk like that. She was very professional. I got that plastic surgeon. But she was like, yeah, Dr. Yang is going to go in there. And they thought they had to do that tissue transplant. But, if you put your hand on the top of your skull, you can wiggle your skull quite a bit. There's a lot of skin on there. So you obviously don't want to wiggle it to giving yourself a bad facelift, but you can wiggle skin around quite a bit. So she actually removed a bunch of the thin, macerated, bad condition skin. And then she was able to rotate his scalp ever so slightly. You can't tell by looking at him and fix it up. It looks better than before the surgery. They made an improvement.
Wow.
And 2 hours after he comes out of surgery, Amanda, he is recovering in a recovery room. He's not in neuro ICU. He's just in neuro recovery. Never have I ever. And then he orders pancakes.
Oh my gosh.
He orders pancakes and bacon. And that gets up there, I don't know, maybe a half an hour later or something. And my husband, joking around, says to him, bacon. And my son, being my son, is like, oh, do you want some? You can have some. And we're like, no, we want you to eat it. But he's just like, comes out of it cheerful, joyful, hungry, relaxed. Every single person in our community it feels unreal. I've been driving around the last few days thinking, is this a terribly weird dream? Have we not really had the surgery? Like, wake up, because it's so bananas that it went so well.
Yeah.
Isn't that just it's a mad story.
It is. When you texted me after the surgery was over, it was 90 minutes and the recovery, I was like, wait, what? Yeah. I mean, we've had amazing surgeons. Telling the story makes me hot and sweaty, and I've just turned on my air conditioning even more. And I'm like, this is ridiculous, guys, ridiculous. But talking about this stuff makes me physically uncomfortable. So it was just the most remarkable series of good luck, a series of incredible skill by the neurosurgeon, Dr. Liu, and the plastics surgeon, Dr. Yang. Unbelievable skill. And then their whole team. OHSU, as I've mentioned before, is a teaching hospital. I love a teaching hospital because I love the idea of those teaching, trying to bring their very, very best every single time. And I love the idea of the students wanting to overachieve and wanting to learn. And I just think I think the minds are so tuned in to doing it well that I think doctors and surgeons are great across the board. I think there's an extra level of enthusiasm. And I know that's a funny word to talk about with surgery, but people who cut love surgery. The enthusiasm they bring to it and the desire to be the best, it just knocks my socks off every time. Yeah. When I saw that picture of Dallas, I don't know if he was still at the hospital but when he was standing up walking, it was like, took my breath away. He looked amazing.
He walked out of the hospital. He walked to our car, which was, OHSU is an enormous hospital. It's several city blocks. It's 14 stories high. There's like 10 buildings. It's enormous. The campus is enormous. It's like a little town. They have their own farmer's market. It's bananas. My car was in one of the closest lots. It was about a quarter mile away. and it's hilly. We call it the hospital on the hill. We just say going to the hill. And I was like, let me go get the car. And he was like, no, I can walk out. And I'm like, okay, well, if you need to stop at any point in time. And we walked real slow, really slowly. And I was like, this is unbelievable. He went home Sunday night.
It's beautiful.
So I don't know what the lesson is. I wanted to share with people the update. I wanted people to know that it's, you and I have such a, when people describe you and I, Amanda, they talk about how optimistic and positive and cheerful we are. And those things are true. And those are choices we've made in our personalities and in our behaviors to choose to let those be the stronger parts of our personality. That doesn't mean that we are not, and speaking for myself with this situation, terrified, frustrated, uncomfortable, worried. I don't like the word angry because I think it's covering up things, but I was really disappointed and frustrated that I couldn't get things scheduled and I couldn't get calls back. And I was really scared that every single day, every time that it came to Friday at noon and they were like, oh, that person's gone already, call back on Monday. I'm like, my son is waiting for brain surgery and this is another delay of 2 or 3 days. And knowing that you have to hold it together. You cannot be on the phone yelling at people. You think they're going to help you if you're yelling at them. They are not. Even though it's kind of, you're bubbling up with just such frustration. You just want to be like, help me, somebody please help me. Help my son, help my child. And you can't.
Yeah.
And so those feelings are really normal. Feeling out of control and feeling frustrated or angry or alone. Those feelings are all part of the experience and part of the trauma.
You were talking about just the last 2 months and all the things you were trying to do, and because you didn't know what to expect. And it's like, I feel that every day. And I feel like we have two things that we hold. I feel like we hold this piece of gratitude, and I feel like we hold this piece of grief.
Yeah.
And I feel like those grief and gratitude, they go hand in hand. And I feel like we hold them every day. We walk with them and we hold them in different ways. I have this grief for Mackenzie. Last night, it was heavy, very heavy. Still feels heavy today when she woke up with a neck spasm I'm like, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? Just wanting to make sure we're checking all the boxes because sometimes the pain is overwhelming and you forget. Yeah. But then there's this gratitude for this amazing life that she does have in spite of the pain. So I feel like we have these two things that every day we hold in our hands, this grief and this gratitude, and we walk with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the choice that we make.
It is. And for me and for my family, we've discussed this ad nauseum. It is the only choice that keeps us sane. It is the only choice that keeps us from tipping over into rage and despair, because I see those emotions. I see them. Sometimes I get real close to them. I actually was on one of my phone calls, and it was a day that in one day I had been transferred. I think it was 8 times, 7 or 8 times transferred. And every single person that I said, and this was weeks after the original finding the metal, weeks after that, I would tell everybody, okay, he's actually got metal sticking out of the skull. You can see the metal. It has erupted through the skin. You can see the metal, which means there is an opening from the outside of the world to inside his brain. Every single one of those people said, he needs to go to the doctor. He needs to go to the emergency room. Yeah. Yes. We started there 10 days ago. Yes. And at one point, and they don't know me from Adam. I know that. They're just starting with me fresh. And at one point I was so frustrated that I just said, I'm just going to have to call you back, because I knew that I was losing a grip on my best self, and my not best self. She not my favorite person.
No,
I don't like to let her out of the cage. She can be real wild. She bites.
No.
Yeah.
We're going to cut this part, but I was trying to just get my hormone replacement patches. There's a nationwide shortage, in case you didn't know. My doctor, I send my little message to my doctor, and whoever is in the office sends me a message back, call around. Okay, because I have time to do that. So last Saturday, I decided I'm going to call around. 9 places later, one gentleman who was a tech laughed at me when I called. He's like, they're making TikTok videos about it because it's that big of a shortage. And when TikTok gets a hold of it, he's laughing about this. 9 places later, finally find a place that's going to do it. 4 days later, they can fill the script. People don't have the capacity for this. They do not have the time and capacity. We are in 2026 and we can't get our crap together.
You said a naughty word.
I can say crap.
I'm not cutting. Yeah, it's bananas. Right. And when you are
it is bananas.
And you're talking about hormones. When you're needing hormones, girl, you need some hormones. Like,
you better get me a patch.
I'm saying, you don't know. It's not that great.
You don't.
I'm dealing with fatigue.
Years without them. And I know that they're helpful.
Yeah, you got that right. All right, Amanda, we have run way longer than expected. I gotta go. My mother-in-law is turning 94 in a couple weeks. And yesterday she said, sure wish you'd come over and clean my house. And I said, yes, ma'am. So I got up this morning and baked her some cookies and prepared some food for her. And I'm going to drive over to her house and clean it. And then hopefully get back across town before rush hour. Because our rush hour out here is no joke. It's not for the weak. No joke. I am cheering for you and Mackenzie, and I'm so sorry you guys are going through that. I don't know what you're going through. I know enough to know it stinks, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there's no end. There's no end.
Mm-mm. But what are we going to do? We're going to keep looking for those glimmers. We're going to keep building friendships and community. We're going to keep recognizing that we have that grief and gratitude at the same time, and we're going to lean on each other and lean on our people, and Hopefully we'll just keep moving. I love you, friend.
I love you, friend.
All right, everybody. Keep those lights on.
Keep the lights on.